Welcome to everyone. My name is Kimiko Han. I am a professor in the English department and also with the MFA program in creative writing and literary translation. So welcome to this now annual event we have celebrating the Birdhouse Awards, publications by Ghostbird Press. And we have Peter Vanderberg back there, who will join us after the reading and talk a little bit more. I'm actually here to introduce the moderator. And I'm going to use a script because I'm accustomed to doing that after having read at the White House. Sorry. Lee Norton is a lecturer in English at Queens College, City University of New York, here, where he teaches courses on writing, literature, and editorial work. He holds a PhD in English and comparative literature from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He is a member of the editorial board at Ugly Duckling Press, where he edits chapbooks and full-length volumes of poetry, experimental prose, and poetry in translation. By the way, if you are not familiar with Ugly Duckling Press, it is the premier hand letter press, at least on the East Coast, if not the planet. So there. Lee also co-edits Second Factory, which is Ugly Duckling's poetry magazine, and until 2022, he served as Ugly Duckling Press's development director, a role in which he co-created the Ugly Duckling Apprenticeship Program, which is now in its 6th year. We are fortunate to have him as a colleague and here to introduce Ghostbird Press and the Birdhouse Award. Lee.
In respect of chord lengths, I guess I'll take your chair. First off, let me just echo Kimiko's thanks to you all for coming. Thanks to Peter and thanks to our readers for this evening. As perhaps you could tell from Kimiko's overly generous introduction, I'm deeply interested, both academically and creatively, in the work of independent publishing, small presses, of the chapbook as a form, a bit of a nut for it, actually. And I know I'm not the only one. We have some burgeoning interest in that form here on campus. So it's really fortuitous and great to have this particular lineup and this particular ongoing publishing project in Ghostbird Press, represented by the four of you today. I will briefly introduce a couple of people. First, Pete Vanderberg, who will join us after for Q&A. So please think about any questions you may have about the press. Pete Vanderberg is the editor of Ghostbird Press and a PhD student at St. John's University. He is the author of several chapbooks, including War Torn, recently out from Finishing Line Press. He lives and teaches on Long Island. Along with him, we have, I think, 3 consecutive, is that right? Winners of the Birdhouse Prize. And we're, of course, here to celebrate Hannah Lee's most recent publication and prize-winning book, chapbook, On the Other Side of Magpie. Francesca Hyatt for Forest Wish in, I think it was 2021, the prize. Is that right? And I will introduce them more extensively when they read, but I figure you don't want to listen to me rattle off 4 long introductions. So I'll start with our first reader, Joe Gross, who's 2022 Birdhouse winner. Is that right? Okay, I got the order correct. You'll kick us off. Joe Gross is a Flushing-based bookseller, poet, translator, and recipient of the Birdhouse Prize for his 2023 chapbook, Lest We All Get Clipped. His work has been anthologized in Eating Alone, Essays and Reflections, out in 2023 from Clothesline Press, and The Pearl, also out in 2023 from Wyeth Renwick. Joe holds an MFA from Queens College, right here, where he was co-editor of Armstrong Literary. You can find him on Twitter at Comrade Capybara and on Instagram at Joe Gross Poet. So please join me in welcoming Joe Gross as our first reader tonight.
I just want to start by thanking you for hosting me, having me, and coming out to listen to a few poems. I'm just going to kind of pick at random from my collection. I'm going to start with one of my own personal favorites called Beatitude. A forsaken saint in a ShopRite uniform is begging alms on the overpass. He sees my uniform. Oh, you work at ShitRite too? We talk, and my wallet comes out. Sometimes multiplication of loaves just means splitting one loaf between two people. But miracles like mutual aid are survival pending revolution. This next one is from one of the anthologies, Eating Alone, but also in this collection. It's called Itadakimasu, Braised Venison over Polenta, and starts with a quote from the Talmud. When a judge sits in judgment over his fellow man, he should feel as if a sword were pointed at his own heart. Corn's monoculture, the ceaseless cold cellaring of its color, the sale of the farmer's seed stock, and the grind's calibrated coarseness, water in its reservoir, a chicken's ebullience caged and cubed, the butcher's overdue bills, the vintner's contribution, tannic as his tobacco's thrift, cans cloistered in their prompt necessity and tomatoes suspended abundance, like locusts clung to every rock's bottom along the ascetic desert's edge, the killing of a sacred deer, every fecund flower that fed him, every wordless fright that herded him toward the gun, every enticement of musk and moss and verdure, moisture's last lick and sinking sinews, the spices we could have grown ourselves if we called a garden a gathering. All of this I humbly receive. I plead guilty on every count. I'm also going to read the last poem from this chapbook, which I have edited heavily since actually including it here. You can see I just kind of wrote a new ending into the... To Mangianopoli, Viale Leonardo da Vinci, Roma. And it starts with a quote from Emily Dickinson. I am out with lanterns looking for myself. A conspiracy theorist tells me Joe is too terse a name. I should use something more melodic. Over a couple nights at a Neapolitan pizzeria, I have been leaving a different variation of Giuseppe on all my pickup orders. Giuseppino, Beppe, Pepe, Giovi. Till one night the pizzaiolo asks, Che si chiama stasera? Joseph, a name I use for nothing. Who am I? Who wants to know? The cap on my Coke bottle reads, Gustami e riciclami. Savor and recycle me. I'll tell you every story I've seen, heard, stumbled through, grazed from the gray earth below my bestinkered feet. Those impervious surfaces where water cannot grasp the true ground and tells its tales to others instead. If I like you and think you'll listen, really listen. But I'm never sure what to call myself, and I've got to know your name too. Some air names reach each other rain-soaked and ready to share their shade. Somewhere without language or streets. A rust on the wrought iron of involuntary solitude's rule. May they stick in quietude's craw, echo in its throat, the choked clamor of breaking chains, the bedlam of breaking bread. Thank you. Stumbled over my own handwriting a little bit there, but and then these are some new pieces that have been published since the chapbook. Proserpina contadina. This one starts with a quote from Simone Weil's Gravity and Grace. Our existence is made up only of his waiting for our acceptance of not being. I want to die to see Hades abiding autumn this once and only time, to behold that interminable tramonto and move meekly beyond the mountain, remember my first dusk and long for it, the moist lotus open for lack of it, and I unwitting as the other newborn dead, who bide their time before the bellow of Charon's oar, all of us lost littered along Akron, our dresses hiked and lurching into Lethe, stomping our memories into mirth, our mirth fortifying the river's wine. I want to die, to see myself crushed like grapes. The moist lotus open, skins empty and soul shorn from the body's pomace. Along Akron, the simmer of death's ferment. Ma non ci sta spazio in cielo, vede che Dio mi venga pia. Yet still I sprout, cornucopial, amongst sullen men carrying their scythed wheat and shucked corn away from their tables into the full mouths of the overfed, working for the coin that covers their eyes and teaching their children a grim liturgy. Take these crusts, Francesca Petta, polish your plate like a priest combing the chalice for the last crumbs of Christ with a splash of his blood. And I should have said at the beginning, too, there was borrowed language in that one from Sappho and then also my grandmother. This is another poem titled Beatitude. It's a series I've been writing for a while. But yeah. A guy drops $10, almost bobbles a bouquet, working his way back to his Casino Boulevard Beatrice, having harrowed the Hudson Yards hells and shepherded the shorn flowers of the field to the Main Street Flushing sphere of fire. I bestow it back, yo, my man, brother, my guy, being of the opinion the bouquet is a lily too light, and opining inaudibly how he should have devoted the damn $10 to. Thus parabled, I pollute with pessimism's prognostications the 35mm nitrate night. But capital cannot overmaster these old-fashioned lovers' labors, nor alienate them. But cash cannot drown the incessant bloom of decent desire's dull ache. But one must render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, unto God what is God's, unto the workaday wage earners what is ours. The film stock burns up. Cash ain't for us. 8 hours don't make a day, and we're just dimes holding up $1. What's left to us is that celestial selfless love. And this last one's called Asceticism, and begins with a quote from Big Night, one of my favorite movies. Knowledge of God is the bread of angels. Deny yourself. Drink to thirst and dull desires. Carry no cask but the drip of rain. Sleep in the open. Let serene sands erode your shoulders. Make a sacrifice of your sound to the sunset's silence, then speak no more. Tie your hair back. Let the maple clay gather in its strands. Lick your lips, but seek not. Press the oil out of seeds with your mouth if you must. Till you forswear even the names of what you crave. Meat, lipstick, linen. Welcome belly to the one bowl feast. A word is enough for a wise man. Save yourself and save none else. You and I, we say our prayers in the garden of night. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Our next reader will be Francesca Hyatt, who is a writer, translator, and lecturer of English at CUNY, Queens College, right here. She has an MFA in creative nonfiction, and her chapbook, Forest Wish, won the Birdhouse Prize in 2021. She's an editor at KTB Magazine, a founding co-editor of the new literary journal Clotheslines, and a co-editor of the anthology Eating Alone. She is a summer 2024 recipient of a residency award at the Kimmel Harding Nelson Center for the Arts. Please join me in welcoming Francesca.
Hi, thank you so much. Is this on? Yes, okay. Yeah, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so grateful to the MFA for setting up this event, and for Peter for publishing this book, which is very precious to me. And this is a work that's part of a bigger project. So I'm going to read 2 pieces from here and 2 other pieces that are part of the project. And they're sort of prose, poemy. Some are a little more prose, some are a little more poemy. And this first one is called Tannenbaum Fir Tree. And it's Freiburg, Deutschland, 1981. I was born in the Black Forest. Black because Tannenbäume grouped together look dark from the distance. Dark from the distance of the Alps that the Romans climbed and crested before they settled or colonized the place and called it Silva Negra, according to the Schwarzer Tourismus GmbH, or Marciana Silva, according to wikipedia.de. And I'll read the footnote here. Wikipedia.de, which includes a bitter note about how Ernest Hemingway visited a town in the Black Forest in 1922 and subsequently published einige nicht gerade wohlwollende Reportagen, if you not exactly favorable remarks, in the Toronto Star, where he made fun of the locals and their fishing laws and porcupine hair cuts, and sauerkraut breath. And yet, the town of Triebeg hosts an annual festival called Hemingway Days, in which includes a writing competition that required participants to simplify German complex sentences structure to match Hemingway's spare prose, as described in the Wall Street Journal. The forest began just across the street from our house, and growing up, I spent a lot of time there. The trees were tall, the woods were dark, and the forest floor was soft with matted layers of pine needles and spongy earth matter. It was a perfect place to play hide and seek and then later manhunt, a game which basically consisted of Jessica's older brother and his friends chasing us around on hours on end. The whole town and surrounding forest were fair game. And so in between the brief adrenaline-fueled sprints, when we caught sight of John N's bowl cut bobbing through the trees, we spent a lot of time just wandering around, hanging out under bridges, and dipping our feet into the creek and messing around with bark. In 4th grade, Jessica and I pooled our resources and bought a decent-sized knife that we shared, but I don't remember what we did with it. Mostly, I think it made us feel tough, a quality we highly revered. The word Tannenbaum may be familiar in English to some speakers. The word Tannenbaum may be familiar to English speakers from holiday music because the song with its name, which we translate as "O Christmas Tree," in German, the song has nothing to do with Christmas. It's an old folk tune, which praises the faithfulness of an evergreen tree that, unlike a maiden's love, sticks around through all the seasons. The Black Forest is full of these loyal firs, though somehow, as a kid, I never made the connection between the festive tree in the living room and the tall trees in the forest. Similarly, it never occurred to me that when my parents moved from Ohio to Germany, they were returning us to the land of our roots. So the next section I'm going to read is called Czereśniewa, Cherry Tree. Török Bálint, Magyarország, 1996, and Dayton, Ohio, 2020. In 1996, my family moved to a small town outside of Budapest, Hungary. The communist regime had ended 7 years prior, and Hungary was in a messy moment of transition. The year before our move, a major economic reform bill passed that caused state services to be privatized, tuition fees on higher education to be imposed, and neoliberal economic policies enforced. I was 15 at the time and only had vague notions about politics and economics. What I did know is that our town, Török Bálint, was full of cherry trees. Our own backyard had 3 trees with extravagant blossoms, followed by an abundant, delicious harvest. Firm fruit with juicy red flesh, pleasantly tart, perfectly sweet. Nearly everyone had a cherry tree or two in their backyard, along with a vegetable garden full of waxy light green peppers and beefy tomatoes and piles of cucumbers. People sold their backyard fruits and vegetables at little stands in front of their houses. Who bought their wares? I don't know. People who didn't have time to tend their gardens, visitors from the city perhaps, neighbors who wanted different varieties than grew in their own backyards. Within our first year in Török Bálint, a giant French supermarket was built on the edge of town. Within our second year, another French supermarket was built in the neighboring town. The fruit and vegetable stands started to disappear. Then the malls started popping up. By the end of our second year, there was no trace of the fruit and vegetable stands. And then the trees started dying. One cherry in our yard was taken by storm, another by blight. We also had a plum that was taken by disease and an apricot that died because it was so heavy with fruit that the branches broke and the tree succumbed. I asked my dad about this recently, and he filled in some gaps in my memory. How many sweet cherries we had, how many sour, what the deal was with the apricot, and how my mom and her friends were in the middle of a Bible study when the storm blew the big cherry down. I wanted this entry to be about the ills of capitalism, and it is. But in talking with my dad, another thread emerged. He told me that he replaced the first felled cherry with a maple, the second with a linden. He told me about the trees he's planted recently, a buckeye, a flowering cherry, several maples, a sweet gum, and an oak sapling he rescued from a ditch. The recent trees are on my parents' property in Ohio, where they bought and fixed up an old farmhouse upon return to the U.S. after 40 years abroad. While still in Hungary and deciding where to live in the U.S., they met with a discernment counselor to talk through their options. Southern California, close to my grandma, Ohio to be near my mom's family, or North Carolina to be near me and my sister. The counselor asked them all kinds of things and then came to the conclusion that wherever they moved, my dad needed a place with lots of trees. It was like one of those word cloud tools that analyzes audio from a lecture about Derrida And the most frequent keywords end up being feelings and moon. Somehow it all came down to trees for my dad. I find them very interesting, he says. I'll probably plant a tree or two every day for as long as I live here. He's 75 now, and I bet he will. He's turning 80 this summer, and he is still planting trees. So I'm going to read a fourth section from here. It's a tiny bit longer, and then one more section that's newer. So this one is called Tree Strangers number 4. And part of the concept of this book is there's there's narrative bits from various moments throughout time. And then there's this quest I had to identify this particular tree. I was writing this during the pandemic. There was a tree outside my window, and I was trying to figure out what it was. And I had decided not to look it up like using an app or just Google images. So I was sort of waiting for the information to come to me, and then eventually decided to get a book from the library. And so this is sort of the reveal of the quest to find out what this book was. And one other thing to know is that part of what I was doing with this book was experimenting with this pronoun that Robin Wall Kimmerer sort of devised called ki. So instead of saying it, referring to living beings that are plant beings, she uses ki. So you'll hear that a little bit in here. So Tree Strangers number 4, Brooklyn, November 2020. The library emails, my book is ready. It's Wednesday, a sunny and lovely morning. I pack my backpack full of overdue books to return, and then drat. I realize it's Veterans Day and the library is closed. Dejected. Thursday. Raining, drizzly, terrible, blustery. I bundle up and walk 20 minutes through the chilly, windy streets to the library. With the new COVID protocols, library book requests are pulled from the shelves and wait behind the counter for librarians to retrieve. I bounce up to the plastic shielded desk, ready for my field guide, feeling like a freak. And as predictable as rain on a long-awaited picnic, the attendant can't find my book. He comes back several times to double-check my name, doesn't even bother to make the joke about whether my family owns the Hyatt hotel chain, and then says sorry. But he gets the other guy who looks a bit more in charge, who asks when I got the notice that the book was ready. I say, a few days ago. And he says, we've been backed up, so you might have gotten the notice, and we haven't been able to get it from the shelves yet. I say, but I double-checked my account. It says it's here. He repeats that the circulation desk has been backed up and the machines have been down for a few days, but he'll check again. He finds it. My name had printed incorrectly. This counts as high drama in my current life. November 2020. I come home, the field guide burning in my bag. I open it and go to page by page through the deciduous trees. Each tree has a list of facts, including addresses where specimens can be found in each burrow. And then pictures of the tree, close-ups of fruit and flower and leaves, and full-body views of majestic boughs in different seasons. Some of my earlier ideas are immediately struck down. Definitely not a linden, which has simple heart-shaped leaves. I feel a little sad about that. I mean, I knew Key wasn't a linden, but how special would it be if Key was, here in Brooklyn, surrounded by so many specimens, this old-world tree rich in medicine and poetry? I lightly cringe remembering that elm had crossed my mind. The American elm, at least, is easy to rule out with its simple pointy leaves, telltale, jagged little teeth. In the process of leafing, through the pages, I'm happy to see that I was right about the oaks identified in the park. The English ones, simple leaves, oblong, soft curvy edges. But it turns out there are hundreds of kinds of oaks, and their leaf shapes vary greatly. Long and sharp-looking leaves, others that resemble maples a bit. But not even one vaguely resembles the tree outside my window. Anyhow, not oak, not beech, not ash. Finally, I get to the section with trees that have compound leaves, and I turn to the page with a tree of heaven. My heart sinks. Compound leaves, slightly pointy, look feathery when peering up into the crown. Clusters of seed pods dangle like jewels from the distance. This must be it. The tree of heaven is a weed. My on-again, off-again landscaping jogs have taught me that much. Key grows quick and tall and has abundant and eager offspring, shooting up in garden beds all across the East Coast. Kin smells like peanut butter, which is kind of fun, slightly endearing, but the plant is a pain. Tree weeds not dealt with are the enemy of garden beds. They'll win out over any kind of squash, arugula, foxgloves, and petunias don't stand a chance. Betty Smith chose The Tree of Heaven for her novel A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, and I begin imagining how I'll read that book and relate to it with my writing, to my Tree of Heaven growing outside my Brooklyn window. But the Tree of Heaven seed pods aren't right. In the pictures, they're paper clusters, not dangling jewels. I feel a glimmer of excitement. I'm talking out loud to myself in my living room, glad my roommate isn't home. I'm running to my room to grab the plant parts I've been saving and hold them up against the images. They're dried out and it's hard to tell, so I look out my window, but it's dark. I keep flipping. I get to the locust section and my heart flutters again. There's something so special about locusts. Maybe their biblical lore. Maybe the feel of the words honey and locust as they slip out of your mouth. Black locust, too, such a strong name, and its fall leaves are bright yellow, just like my tree. But the pods are wrong, not wrong, just different. Quite beautiful, actually. Dark brown pea pods, so striking against the bright yellow leaves. Now I know that that's what I was sitting under, a black locust, the other night, eating greasy, delicious pizza with Karen on decal. I keep paging. And then their key is Japanese pagoda tree or Chinese scholar tree, Styphnolobium japonicum, nothing I'd ever considered at any moment. And here key is clear as day. Alternate pinnate compound leaves, fruit and pods resembling a string of beads. Funny that I thought of bullets before beads. People all over the city notice these trees, the guide says. Less alone am I for being a person among others, noticing all over the city. So, thanks. Just got one more. My last little bit to read. I thought this would be fun to read. I wrote this piece actually for KTB, sort of a version of it, almost exactly 2 years ago to the day. And because my writing is very weather inspired, it was just, it was funny to revisit this piece and realize that it's really kind of about now. So this piece is called Poems for the Cruelest Month. The cherry trees dotting my neighborhood, the luminous spessums in Central Park, the blossom bears on campus, all are in gob-smacking, extravagant bloom. Impossible spires exploding with white, pink, and purple petals reach towards Disney blue skies, and I can hardly stand it. The wild cherry outside my kitchen window is going easy on me. The buds have been swelling day by day, and I know one morning I'll yawn into the room and be undone by beauty, but not today. They survive the great sleep of winter, life inside resting, dreaming maybe, darkness, dampness, cold, frozen twigs, dead-looking, all hope lost, grim as all get out, memory of last summer, no help, long, spindly branches drooping from brittle bark. Then, the days of longer light, the sky a softer color, the air a sweeter smell. The birds begin again, the buds puff up, and by some alchemy of heat and light, they decide it's time and burst open all at once, blinding us, dazzling, reveling in their own profusion. But what if the heart isn't as swollen with joy as bursting tree buds? How to handle this flamboyance? What if the sight of flowers makes something inside you hurt? Maybe you lost someone last season. Maybe a dream you were dreaming didn't make it through the night. Perhaps some darling bloom hope met a death blow this winter. How then will you reckon with the rending beauty of spring? When images of genocide collide with tulips and cherry blossoms, how to make sense of it? For some, there will be no resurrection. How to hold delight and sorrow at once, how to say yes to meeting in meadows with friends, while the dead show up in your dreams. Perhaps April herself has the answer. A sudden storm on a gentle afternoon, mornings that are chilly enough for warm socks and hot tea, later sweat and sunscreen. One moment bright skies, the next drenching rains, maybe even hail, maybe even a sweater. All of the intensity and unpredictability of this season, the surges of hope and terror, the stirring of memory and desire, making poems this month may be our best bet for helping us hold it all.
Thank you, Francesca. Our next and last reader will be Hannah Lee, whose 2024 chapbook On the Other Side of Magpie is this year's Birdhouse Prize winner and the book we've gathered here tonight to celebrate. Hannah Lee is a New York City-based Korean-American poet who processes her world through poetry. She's a graduate of the Queens College MFA program and is past editor at Armstrong Literary. Her work has been featured in Encounters magazine. Please join me in welcoming Hannah Lee.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out here to listen to some great work by some great people. And I also want to thank Pete for helping make this vision come into reality. So let's get started. Picked out some poems to read today at work instead of doing my job. But that's the spirit. So this first one is going to be Sparrow, which inspired the cover that my lovely friend Rico drew for me. So let's get started. Sparrow. The botanical garden in my neighborhood is free until April. A frigid Sunday morning and a bad NCIS episode later, we find ourselves walking through grass peeking through patches of melting snow, and the bare, gnarled branches reach not for light, but warmth. My mother sits to rest, and I can't help but see the same patches of snow, as if melting through her hair, streaking past the past. And the past is here. I can see it in her eyes as she looks up to those same gnarled fingers reaching for warmth like her own. She's been complaining about the cold as of late. I can't remember when she started aching and walking slowly. I can't help it. I'll pull a muscle now. We walk down the streets trying to buy soy milk and warm, roasted sweet potatoes. I want to see what she sees in those trees that line the park. The bare trees with a sole bird perched atop. She mentions the bird to me. She wonders about it. Not aloud, but I hear her. The other birds fly about and flitter towards the ground in groups, playing, eating, living their small bird lives. I envy these birds that know more about her thoughts than I. Praying in College Point, New York. God comes down from heaven on Sundays to fill up the building I'm standing on top of. I've climbed through the green, tinted windows that open just enough to hug my body. There are large red steel beams to match the steeple off to the side, wide enough to lie on and face the heavens to watch the wisp of clouds as a strong autumn breeze moves them along. There's a choir of gray air conditioning units between the steel beams that hum loudly in unison. An airplane will pass every 10 minutes or so, a steel beast that silences the over-glorified units with the sound of its speed. The sun shines bright, but nothing grows here on the reinforced concrete covered in black waterproofing. I take in the fresh air that almost tastes like the ocean and leave the rooftop to go inside and say hello to God, knowing my body will be too big to go through the window when I return. Daphne. There was a bird trapped in my cooling unit today. I hid it to make sure it wasn't perched on the ledge. It cried from the inside. My palm smacked the filter like I was burping a baby. No, like punishing a misbehaved child, as if that would expel the bird. I remembered the bird from years ago that laid its eggs in the cooling unit the super took away yesterday. He said he'll store it in case we need a window AC one day. We won't. There lay the bird, a petrified piece of wood, charred, its eggs black as if someone baked them for too long, too hot. The bird, which was a piece of wood, looked at me, eyes milky white against a knowing darkness. It looked at me, a child, the way a child looks around a church. I did not weep for the bird, which was not dead, merely deep in slumber. I did not hear as it wept for me until its carcass dried the way an autumn leaf stops, right before its own crumble. The eggs that never broke did not weep for me, nor their mother. They have yet to understand why they should be sad. Mote. I am a mote solo, which comes from the combination of mother's womb and the English word solo, to mean single since birth. Mote is the Korean reading of the Chinese characters to mean womb. It is also a homophone for the word mote, which means cannot. My mother was birthed from a womb, unable to see any light, not because she was a newborn, but because they had sealed every hole so that not even air could flow. There was a kut nearby to drive away malicious spirits. Kut, now westernized, colonized, into a phonetic spelling of the English word good. A kut is not good for a newborn, too weak to defend itself against spirits that seek to claim conquests to bodies that are not theirs to claim. And so they sealed the room, isolation preferable to loss, preferable to theft. Portrait, Yu Hwan-sun. Make space to bury your nails in your arm. Bite your corn harder. Harder yet. The teeth that bite off your breast tissue. The flesh under the arm feels like breasts. Chickens have been modified like humans to have bigger breasts. The more, the better. You, left with none, were once one of 3,000, screaming manse, meaning 10,000. 19 people died. 2 of those 19, your mother, your father. Your uncle had to pull you so you were not number 20. Instead, you were number 87,063. Your body claimed, your body restrained, your body laid to waste, your body reclaimed, your body buried, your body laid to rest, your body reburied, your body thrown aside for a military base for the soldiers who ripped your body to pieces, your body missing, your body missed. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun was born in 1902. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun was the second daughter. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun went to Iwa Girls High School. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun went home after all schools were closed on March 10th. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun said, "Long live Korean independence." Yersa Yu Hwan-sun saw 19 people who said the same get murdered. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun saw her parents get murdered. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun was found guilty of saying what she said and received a 5-year sentence. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun wrote from prison, "Even if my fingernails are torn, my nose and ears are ripped apart, my legs and arms are crushed, this physical pain does not compare to the pain of losing my nation. My only remorse is not being able to do more than dedicating my life to my country." Yersa Yu Hwan-sun was 17 when she was murdered by the Japanese authorities. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun was not returned to hide evidence of torture. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun was released in an oil crate thanks to Lulu Frey and Jeanette Walter. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun was buried October 14th, 1920. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun had her cemetery destroyed. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun went missing after Japan turned the gravesite into a military base. Yersa Yu Hwan-sun is still missing. Self-portrait Hestia. Keep your shoulders steady as you carve your flesh into 7 equal pieces. 1 to quell the fire outside the hearth. 1 to feed your sister. 1 to feed your mother. Do not remember how time threw a knife at your mother's throat. Let the wall remember instead. 1 to keep your father, who is both time and timeless, satisfied, and yet another for the stomach he does not have, which is still empty. Do not remember how time wrapped your mother to collapse her under the weight of his gravity. 1 to fuel the hearth, and keep 1 close. Use it to keep memories at bay. Use these not memories to fuel the hearth. Keep it warm. Time leaves strewn, a child's toys, the blood of a titan on porcelain shower tiles. And the earth stands between the child and time. Have you ever seen a god banished by the police? A titan is left small and yet even smaller, the child who must now be a god. Eulogy, Epis Lithohermaia, after Rita Dove. A god is rich and bountiful, a harvest made up of the masses, regurgitated nectar, and every mother's milk, receptacles of heat, sputum, and change from mouth to mouth, filling each mouth a cell with warm saccharine memories, longing to be flesh like that of a child, made fragile in the shape of God, an amalgamation of sweet whispers and husks of dolls to fill the cells left empty during creation. The doll, made sturdy, in the shape of a fragile afterimage of God, not a husk, a hive, made to be filled with the sweet, plentiful devotion of a child, and we, like nectar, will grow apart from the honeycombed God, a mouthful of honey, a fistful of an afterimage, grinning. Bastard child. In a home that is not my own, sit in silence, observe, supper, the end not in sight. A family that is mine, supposed to be mine, and I, an outsider peering. And Joseph, who shared only half the water, was never accepted. Baptize a broken half-burnt sparkler. I light another and begin my prayer again. I am not Reuben, not Simeon, not Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Ishkar, nor am I Zebulun. The sparkler breaks, and I remember I am not the prodigal son, under this dull sky devoid of celestial bodies to worship. And last one, I promise. Self-portrait Sado. My father has placed me in a rice box in the middle of the palace courtyard. There are grains at my fingertips and knees at my chin. My son is outside of the rice box wondering, is this how a father loves? The box was sealed shut with tears and the burden of being a father of a nation before a father of a boy. But my father is not a father of a nation, and I am no longer a boy as I grow inside this box, which is both my coffin and the womb I am born from. There is no death inside the box, only having enough space for my body, which is now rice. Shake the box and hear me sing.